Okay. Thank you very
Wonderful.
much for the kind words and the kind introduction. Yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity to share my wild world of wildfires in the province of KwaZulu Natal, or KZN as we call it, or the granny, and you'll see why shortly. As Adriana says, I'm currently employed as the General Manager for the KwaZulu Natal Umbrella FPA, and I'm also, for my sins, the Provincial Fire Protection Officer under the Act 101, which we'll discuss. If we look briefly at the background and the landscapes of KwaZulu Natal, it's mainly makes up 7.7% of the country, and it's one of 9 provinces in South Africa. It's a highly fire-prone landscape, as we'll have a look at later on. And our fire season stretches mainly it's the winter fire season, as we're known. We have 2 fire seasons in South Africa: the summer fire season, which is coming to an end now, which is the Western Cape part of South Africa, and then ours, which is the winter fire season. Winter fire season, we experience snow right down where I live, which is close to Pietermaritzburg, which is the capital of KwaZulu Natal. Up where my airstrip and offices are, we get snowed up there quite often. We get sub-zero temperatures, especially in the mornings and the evenings, for, I would say, maybe 2-3 weeks out of that 5-month fire season. Very little rainfall over that period, and our weather is dictated by the upward flow of the cold fronts, which with the upward flow into the tropics of the ITCZ, the cold fronts that come up from the Western Cape come at us, and we get what we call the Bergwind. In France, it's called the Mistral, which is the northwesterly wind, which comes off the high ground, goes down towards the coast. Extremely warm, extremely dry, and extremely strong, with wind speeds up to 120 kilometers an hour, gusting up to 130 and 140 at times, which, as you can imagine, a fire, unwanted fire in those conditions is an impossibility. And we often sit and tick off the compartments as that fire goes through until conditions change where we can attack it directly. You've got a mixed landscape in KwaZulu Natal, large areas of commercial forestry, which is mainly along your escarpment, all down the east coast of the province. And then on the coast itself, you have large areas of sugarcane. And then up north, you have the big game reserves. And then we have 2 of the World Heritage Sites, which is the Okahlamba, which is the Drakensberg, which is the border between South Africa and the Kingdom of Lesotho, and then the Isimangaliso or St. Lucia estuary up in the north. Forestry species that are grown is mainly pine and eucalyptus and acacia. Pine these days is mainly for pulp as well as ukes, but there are short timber rotations out there. And then a lot of, and especially in this area where I am now, Acacia meanzii, which is for your mining props, chips for export to Japan, and then the bark is used for leather tanning and whatnot. A lot of livestock grazing areas, especially up towards the west of the province. A lot of traditionally managed subsistence farming in what we call Ngonyama Trust. And then, as I've mentioned, extensive areas of biodiversity-rich phytopedon water catchment areas up in Okahlamba, which is the main catchment for the province. To look at KwaZulu Natal, you see with the shape of the province why we call it a granny with a bun. We've got the districts, municipalities. Is my cursor showing? Adriana?
Yes, sorry, I had to unmute myself. Yes, it is.
Is it? Okay. I'm
Yeah,
based
I can see it.
in the Msunduzi, which is the local municipality of the Ungungundlovu district municipality, which is stands for the place of the elephant. And the the Umsunduzi is where the capital of KwaZulu Natal, Pietermaritzburg, is based. So we are on the eastern coast of South Africa, that being Swaziland there, that being the, or Eswatini as it's called now, and then you've got Mozambique up there, Zimbabwe, Botswana, and Namibia there. If we look at the overall risk classes of South Africa, and in particular KwaZulu Natal, you can see that, as mentioned, KwaZulu Natal is a highly fire-prone area, bar for areas like down here, which is what we call the Tugela Ferry area, very rural, and what we could call possibly the Rift Valley of the Tugela River, which is our biggest river in KwaZulu Natal, and that starts up in the Drakensberg or Kahlamba, as mentioned. And then all along the coast here, the south coast as we call it, so you've got the north coast, north of Durban, south coast, south of Durban. That is mainly sugarcane areas all the way down there with subtropical areas. A lot of forestry in this area around Richards Bay, with extensive clonal forestry going on there. Then moving up into the north, you've got the Isimangoliso, Lake St. Lucia is over there. And right up here, you've got the Cozy Bay Lake system onto the Mozambique border. Right, I was going to present this presentation in Portugal last year, and I like to think of integrated fire management as a value chain. There's our definition of a value chain. Being an integral part of strategic planning for many businesses today, a value chain refers to the full life cycle of a product or process, including material sourcing, production, consumption, and disposal recycling processes. To me, that is what integrated fire management is all about. And you break one of those points in the value chain, the rest of the value chain falls flat. And this is exactly the way integrated fire management works. What is IFMS? I had to correct my spelling a couple of times on integrated, but that is basically it's as I said, it's a value chain, and you start with your preparedness, your awareness, your fighting the event, the recovery after the event, etc., etc. So that is the cycle that we go through, and there's various factors which we will be discussing that fit into these parts of the value chain. So what have we got in the wonderful country of South Africa and the province of KwaZulu Natal? We have probably one of the best fire legislations in the world. It's currently known as Act 101. Well, it was the one known as Act 101. I'll explain a little bit about that. But basically what happened is Act 99, which was drawn up in 1981, if I'm not mistaken, prescribed to landowners how and where fire breaks must be established in their areas of operation. It prescribed the length, the width, and the position, as mentioned. And fire breaks, what we call fire breaks, you guys would know it better as fuel reduction, is a belt, a cleared area, whether it be mowing, grading, burning, to ensure that you have an area where you can either stop a fire or fight a fire from. In other words, then try and put in a controlled backburn or burn out to combat the fire approaching. In 1998, that the section under under fire management was withdrawn from the Act, and the Act 101, the National Veld and Forest Fire Act, was established. Recently, the new amendment bill, it was signed into law last week. It's now been renamed the National Veld Fire Act. Simple reason being that we have an organization, most countries have these organizations called Transnet, in our case, the railways. The railways won a court case. They've refused to do their fire breaks in their railroad reserves, and the court found that the definition of veld, as we know it, did not bind or did not mean the veld that was in their veld fire in their rail reserve. Hence, they were told, well, you don't have to put fire breaks in place. Fortunately, we've only got a couple of steam engines left running in the country, and they're mostly for recreational use. So, yes, you don't get that much fire from trains, but as the rail network has started deteriorating, so we're starting to see more and more fires coming from diesel engines and electric engines. One of the key points then of the Act was, as I mentioned, it took away the onus of the state to patrol fire protection on a landowner's property. Remembering now that in the new dispensation since 1994 in South Africa, we had municipalities, which were basically towns and cities. We now have corner-to-corner municipal areas. So what the Act allowed then, it took it out and it put the onus of fire preparedness, fire breaks, fire management on the landowner itself, which at first was a bit of a shock to everybody, but at the end of the day, we'll talk about what the beauty of a FPA or Fire Protection Association is. Now, as mentioned here, it allows for the establishment of fire protection associations. These are areas where landowners, it's a bottom-up structure. So you've no longer got the state top-down. It's now a bottom-up structure. It's the landowner who's responsible. They can establish a fire protection association in an area that has more or less equal types of topography, land uses, etc., and establish a coordinated with radios, with firefighting equipment, firefighting organization. And not just firefighting, obviously dealing with local authorities, with municipal structures, and with provincial structures. Private landowners, as I said, it allowed for them to become decision makers. But the big thing with Act 101 is that private landowners, because of the Constitution of South Africa, it is a voluntary association. So you don't have to, by law, you don't have to become a member. So it becomes very difficult for us working in the FPA structures to try and encourage people to join FPAs. And obviously there's going to be a cost per hectare to run these organizations. However, where it comes to state land, when I say state land, that is government-owned properties, whether it be military, police, DLDR as we call them, which is the Department of Land and Resources, Sand Parks, South African National Parks, and your provincial conservation authorities, they have no choice but to join these fire protection associations. South Africa, you've probably read and seen a lot about our so-called SOEs, which is state-owned entities, where the government is a 51% shareholder. So you've got Eskom, Transnet, Sanrail, which is our freeways, etc. They have to, by law, because the Act is very strict, very clear in the definition of what a landowner is. And whether it's the lessee or the lessor, if you are the lessor, you become the landowner. One of the big carrots of Act 101 was the presumption of negligence. Now, I'm sure in a lot of countries, if you are not automatically assumed to have been negligent, the court is not quite keen to go in there and try and prove negligence. So becoming a member of an FPA, you are not presumed to be negligent because you are now a member of an FPA and you prescribe by the rules and regulations as set up by the FPA. However, what the Act also says is that any landowner whose land a fire may start or spread must use every resource available to him to stop the fire from spreading out of his property. Now, this is where the catch-22 comes in, because let's take, for example, Farmer Joe. He has done everything that he has to do. He's a member of the FPA. He's done all he can do. He's done his fire breaks. He's got his trained firefighters. He's done everything. He's prescribed by what the FPA says. And he has joined my organization, which supplies the aircraft for fighting fires in the province. And he has a fire and he does not call those aircraft. Even if he calls them and they're not available, that's fine. But if he doesn't call them and they are available, then the presumption of negligence clause will fall away, for the simple reason that he did not use every resource available to him to stop that fire from getting out of his property. We then also have the National Fire Danger Rating System, which is based on the combination, we'll talk about it now, between the Australian MacArthur system and what we term the old Rhodesian low-felt fire danger rating system, or fire danger index. And that is what we use to determine our fire danger. Moving on to the fire danger rating system. So your key inputs, as I said, is based on the MacArthur and the old Rhodesian fire danger rating system. Key inputs being temperature, humidity, number of rains since last rain, number of days, since last rain, your QNH, which is your barometric pressure, and your wind speed and wind direction. You chuck all those things into a pot, and it comes out with the National Fire Danger Rating System, as you can see there. Now, my pilots, instead of blue, they've changed that, and they call that comatose, because they're not going to be flying in that. That's normally cold, misty, rainy days, and everybody's that can is either sitting in the pub or watching TV. And so we start moving through. We say that interestingly enough, our most fires occur on green and yellow days, because that is when people are quite blasé. And fires start, they don't realize that the vegetation or the fuel is quite dry still, and fires run away. Whereas on red days, everybody is what we call paraat. They're ready, they got their fire trucks out, the pilots are no longer comatose, and we are preparing ourselves for what could be a very bad fire day. But a lot of our FDIs are in below the red. We might get maybe 3 or 4. Sometimes we've gone up to 11 red days in a winter fire season. And when a fire starts in those conditions, as I said before, we sit and we tick off the compartments. If it doesn't change, there's a big Indian Ocean where the fire's going to stop, and that's all you can do. You try and start obviously from the back, working down the flanks as the traditional way of fighting fires. Okay, FPAs and KZN. We currently have 21 registered fire protection associations in the province, which makes up 81% of our landmass in the province. 18 FPAs are fully functional. I'm currently busy with a project where we are going around, and for an FPA to be fully functional, they have to have certain things in place according to what the expectations of Act 101 is. And we must ensure that they are in place, because without that, we will not qualify for state funding and all these nice to haves. Section 16.1 of Act 101 allows for the formation of a UFPA. So that is where the KZN FPA comes in. We were recognized in 2005 as the first in South Africa, and I was the first appointed fire protection officer for the province. And the UFPA's function is to determine common strategies. So let's ensure that we have proper radio channels that work across the lines, that all the pump fittings on the different firefighting units all work together, and that the airstrips are all in place. My function is to negotiate, as mentioned, the aviation fleet for the province, which we'll chat about. We hold the contracts with our electronic detection, which we'll talk about. I coordinate the training for the province, for the FPAs, so that recognized training providers can come in and do this training for the FPA members. We deal directly with the South African Weather Service on determining the forecast. So we get a 3-day forecast, so that we can twice a day send out the actual fire danger index at 10 and at 2, which we get from almost 70 weather stations stationed around the province, and then obviously the forecast for the next day. And then legal support. I'm often called to go to the Supreme Court as the legal expert, or to assist in court cases in KZN. Functions of an FPA is to appoint a fire protection officer, devise fire management strategy to include length, width, and positioning. Remember, it's on the landowner's responsibility now. Ensure common radio network, common interconnecting firefighting equipment, as mentioned, and training of staff on their local level. liaise with local authorities, liaise with neighboring FPAs, because in a lot of places we have, we have FPAs that are right next to each other, so that they can put in strategic fire breaks where necessary. We have a strategic fire break up on the Orange Free State border and KwaZulu Natal, and that strategic fire break has often stopped fires coming in from the Free State, which is mainly agricultural, coming into our province and burning us down. Providing an instant command system on the local level, and then provide awareness to communities on the local level. We have a lovely program in South Africa called Working on Fire. I'm sure you guys have heard about them. Working on Fire is an EPWP program, which is expanded public works program, which is set up to employ people in rural areas. They are paid less than the minimum wage in South Africa, but they are employed to be firefighters, and they will then exit into whatever. We've got them have exited into fire brigades, into national parks. Some actually qualified now as policemen. So they've got this whole future in front of them, instead of sitting in the townships or in the kraals and not doing anything at all. They're highly trained. We have approximately 5,500 firefighters across the country. And what happens is that during high fire danger system or high fire events, let's say in the Western Cape, they will withdraw teams from KwaZulu Natal, which is the winter rainfall area, to then go and assist in the Western Cape. They are trained in accordance with the North American hotshot standards, so they're highly trained, very fit. And this training doesn't just stop. They have to keep fit, and they have to keep trained. So they are involved. They're not initial attack firefighters. They are more there for the pre-fire season preparedness, as well as awareness, and then extended attack on unwanted fires. So we have them involved in fuel reduction. So what would happen is they are based with fire protection associations. They go and assist with fuel reduction, either manually, chemically, or through burning operations, and that is at no cost to the landowner. If he's a member of the FPA, the only cost would be the variables, which is the transport to get them there, and obviously if they work after hours, the after hours. They are very involved in post-fire rehabilitation. After events, they're currently working on the big fire that I'm sure you people would have read about on the slopes of Table Mountain in Simonstown. They're currently assisting there in the rehabilitation of those burnt areas. And then they do a lot of awareness training at local schools. We also do a lot of awareness training on fires in some of our very well-to-do schools, private schools, because my outlook on all of this is that we've got the most expensive private boys' school in South Africa, just up the road from where I live, and a lot of the children that are in those schools, they go home in the holidays, and they don't go home to the cities. They go home to their mum and dad in the rural areas, or their aunts and uncles in the school holidays. And if you're teaching them at school, doesn't matter how much the school fees are, the message will get down and to these rural communities out there. We have our landowner planning. So we have risk-based firefighting fleets. Those are your 5,000, 4,000, and 3,000 litre fast attack firefighting units. We have your what we call bakkie-sakkies, which is a 500 litre water tank on the back of a Land Cruiser or a bakkie, which can get to a fire very quickly. Because one of the things we do in South Africa, which I think is very different to the rest of the world, remembering that all our forestry areas are man-made forests. It's not indigenous forests like in America and those places. So we apply initial attack. And you'll see now with the detection, when that first sign of smoke is detected, we need to get there as quick and as fast as possible. And my mandate is from call to drop. I must be there. My first drop must be in 15 minutes time from the call to airborne to drop. So we have highly trained proto teams that go in. So each different type of water on wheels, as we call it, they have different types of trained proto teams on them. Strategic species selection on fire-prone slopes. We found that Pinus eleutii, for instance, is a very fire-hardy species to plant. So on our northwestern slopes, which is where our bergwins come from, we will plant Pinus eleutii, or we would put Acacia meanzii, because if Acacia, the silvicultural practice on Acacia is well done, then I don't know if anybody's seen a fire that has gone through an acacia compartment. It doesn't go very far, very fast, because there's nothing for it to burn underneath. We also do internal acacia belts, so we'll break up, instead of having these cut fire breaks looking like whatever, going through the landscape, we would rather have these green belts, well-managed acacia belts, to break the forward force of the fires. We apply mulching. Every 7th row, especially on the coast, is mulched mechanically to reduce the fuel within the compartments. We do under canopy burning, so in areas, especially on pine areas, we will go in and do fuel reduction under the canopy of the trees. Anything from about 5 years of age, we'll go in and we'll do fuel reduction. And then again, instant command. So just some examples of landowner planning. The first photograph is a small unit. That's about 2,000 liters, all on the ground. There's no more people on the back, so they don't fall off and break their legs. They're inside these cabs, strapped in, and those are the units. This is a working on fire team doing fuel reduction on a landowner's property. That is a typical bakkie. So it's a Land Cruiser with a bakkie on the back. Here we are busy with fuel reduction, grass block burns. We do a lot of that towards the end of our winter fire season, just before the new spring growth starts coming in, for conservation reasons and for grazing management on farmlands. Instant command training. I'm sure a lot of you have worked with the sand tables. We do a lot of that. And then this is just an example of some seats on the ground. That is basically my airstrip where I work at. Okay, the area resources we have in the province are paid for by private landowners. A rate per hectare is charged. We cover an area of almost 300,000 hectares of commercial forestry with these aircraft, but we do have obviously game reserves and sugarcane farms and those kind of things. As I mentioned, our initial attack target, call to drop, is 15 minutes. We have two systems that we utilize, the TAC system, which is the American military tracking system, which we have in our aircraft so that we can send messages to the pilot once that spotter is airborne, exactly where that fire is, so that he doesn't waste time getting there, because a lot of the times in the winter, there's a lot of fuel reduction going on, and we don't want somebody dropping water on a fire that's actually a planned burn. And it's very hazy sometimes to determine. And we have what we call Firefly. Firefly is a GoPro camera which sits inside the spotter or aerial command and control aircraft, and it provides a live feed from overhead the fire into the control center or into the ICP, so that if it is a big event, senior management, and we'll see the ICP now, can come into the ICP and manage the fire from 500, 600 kilometers away if necessary. Excuse me. So currently our fleet in the province consists of 5 spotters or aerial command and control aircraft. Well, I'll show you pictures now. We have 10 500 US gallon seats which is the abbreviation for a single engine air tanker. And we have 2 medium lift helicopters, which are Airbus B3 Squirrel helicopters. We then have government support, will come in, and they are on first call to the government. So if there isn't a disastrous situation, they will get called to those disaster situations wherever it might be in South Africa. However, we can utilize them. Obviously, we just pay for the hours that we use, but we do not have to pay for the standby of the aircraft. Currently, government support in KZN is 3 spotters, 2 seats, and 2 helicopters. And we base the aircraft strategically in the province so that they are close to rural areas. However, they still need to be at a recognized airstrip because our beloved South African Civil Aviation Authority, there are rules and regulations that we have to abide by. So those are just some of our aerial resources. On the left here is a seat. This is an aerial command and control aircraft, which is, we use the Charlie 182s or the Cessnas that can take 3 packs. And then this is the Huey helicopter that we use, which we get through the Working on Fire program. And if you look very carefully, this aircraft was actually built in 1973. And if you look very carefully there, you can see bullet holes on the side of it from the Vietnam War. So just shows you they're still flying these Bell aircraft. We have electronic detection. So we've replaced manned lookouts in South Africa due to safety and security concerns, because in the past it was mainly the old gogos that used to go up into the fire towers, and a lot of the times they were women. And with the current security situation in a lot of our areas, it's not safe for these people anymore to be in those towers. So we've replaced it with electronic detection, and we use line of sight. We do not use infrared, for the simple reason, as I explained, is that we apply initial attack. And if you've ever held a lighter under your hand or under under your hand and felt how long it takes for that heat to hit your hand, now that's a delay in detecting the fire. So we use very clever algorithms to look at to look for those fires. We've got 3 detection centers in KwaZulu Natal, one up in Zululand, one with me, and one in the south of the province. And then we have what we call dashboards in strategic detection or FBA offices, where people can see the fires, but they cannot manipulate the cameras. That can only be done in the detection center. So we've got currently 94 cameras covering the province, and they cover almost 2 million hectares, because obviously we are also covering rural areas where they are a threat to commercial forestry areas. And again, coming to initial attack, with an FDI of 55 and above, the detection operator is authorized to dispatch aircraft to go to a fire before the forester is involved. Because a lot of times the forester, I don't know, I want to go and look first because of the costs involved with the aviation. But the detection guys can call on FDI 55 and above. And we have our provincial ICP. Excuse me. So this is our provincial ICP, as set up. It can be manned immediately. The 4 big screens is your fireflies and all of that are up there. So any manager can see throughout the province what is going on. That is a typical fire tower or camera tower in the Zululand area, with Zululand being very flat, so the towers are sometimes up to 80 meters high. Biggest problem is those things there because of theft. So we're continuously improving on our security to do that. This is a typical screen that you would see over here of what can be done. So that's a fire coming from Firefly. There it is on the camera. It's giving you the weather at all times, and you can then go to the various sectors to see what the fire and where it's heading to. These are operators that are sitting in the detection center, and their job is to detect, position, and report fires. Once that's done, that's their job done, and they move on to the next operation. So all those wonderful things that I've just spoken about, and I see I'm starting to get close to my time now, is the value chain working? A simple answer is no. For this reason, there's challenges enforcing the legislation in South Africa. The police do not understand what Act 101 is all about. And if you go to a police station, they give you this blank stare. They don't know what to do. If you're fortunate enough to get a case opened, remembering that a fire protection officer has got the same powers as a policeman when it comes to enforcing the act, and it goes to the courts, there's not enough court evidence out there or cases out there for the magistrate to be able to compare to, and they're thrown out of court. However, we are starting to get better, and there are a couple of cases coming forward now. State land, SOEs, municipalities refuse to be members of the FPAs. They don't understand why. But the new legislation that's just been passed, the amendment bill that's just been passed now, should hopefully clip their wings, and that they don't just become members, but that they become paying members. Collapsing municipal structures. In this country, we call an act called the Fire Brigade Services Act, which gives a fire brigade, or a fire chief is responsible for fighting all fires. Remember, I mentioned municipalities are now wall to wall. The fire chief is responsible for fighting those fires. Unfortunately, some of the fire engines and municipalities do not have, although it is law in this country under the Fire Brigade Services Act and the Disaster Management Act, that they must have the equipment to be able to do their function. They don't. Ngonyama Trust, as I mentioned, Ngonyama Trust is land in Zululand, which is under the control of the Zulu monarch, and nobody knows who's who as members, and we sit with 2.1 million hectares of non-covered, or they are covered as in FBAs, but they do not do as they're supposed to. No control in rural areas to ensure fire management. A lot of these subsistence farmers, they will, at the peak of the fire season, on the most horrific days, decide it's now time to do fuel management burns, and don't give a damn about the next door neighbor or his property, and they go off and they go and sit and drink, and we have to go and fight the fires. And then there's continuous challenges in the department, which is supposed to and management structure changes in the department that is responsible for managing the act. We've also got this wonderful thing called climate change. We're seeing it all over the world. I have my personal opinions on this, but I won't share it here. But there is definitely something out there, and man is not helping it along either. And we are seeing these super events, like we've seen recently in Canada, and what we're currently seeing in Australia. We're going to see more and more of that. I think in South Africa, it's already being said that the Western Cape, with all its beautiful vineyards, etc., is going to become a desert in the not too distant future. And it's about time that we get more and more public intervention and education out there as far as climate change is concerned, to ensure that we prevent these super events as far as fire is concerned. And that's me. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you so much, Simon. Let me just put my camera back on. Yeah, thank you for that excellent talk. Yeah, little some clap hands there. Yeah, ever so clear, really excellent. Thank you so much for taking the time, putting that together, and just presenting this overview so clearly, I think. So if you could stop sharing, because we're getting like a little pictures of all of us back in the thing.
Yeah.
And then we will open up to questions and comments from the attendees. I'm sure there must be some questions for you, and if people want to raise their hand, or you can always drop something in the comments. The little hands. Yes, I can see a hand. Where is it? Oh.
Hi, Simon. Thanks very much. I just wondered about potential attack
Oh, your volume's very low. Can you turn it up?
Can you not hear me?
No.
Well, like just about, but not really.
Or is that better?
Oh, that's
Can
better.
you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry, yeah, no, I was talking through my computer speakers, not my thing. Yeah, so like when you're doing initial attack and you talked a lot about the kind of focus on that, and then you also said, you know, sometimes fires get too big and you just have to wait for them to burn out to the ocean, right? I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about sort of your sense of what size and scale of fire you think it's really meaningful to try and combat, and like when do you just have to let Mother Nature
Oh, you're frozen.
Frozen. Okay, I can answer him there. It's actually
what
very
sort of size?
Oh.
I'm out.
Oh, can you hear us all? Yeah, you froze for a second, and then
yeah,
just repeat that
I got
last
kicked
bit.
out, and now I'm back.
Oh,
all right.
Yeah,
now
so
I got the gist.
what's
Yeah. Look, it's not about the size, to be honest. Where it's concerned with us, it's more a safety aspect. Remember, all our forests or commercial forestry in South Africa is all man-made. So it's all about the rand in a sense at the end of the day. And even if, you know, I say in tongue in cheek, we'll wait until it gets to the Indian Ocean. Obviously, hopefully things will change before it gets to that point. So we will always, in our initial attack efforts, where we never go for the head of the fire. We will always work on the flanks, keep it as narrow as possible, and to keep the losses as low as possible. And but staying away from the head, because that is a no-go. That is just an unsafe situation. So it's all about, yes, it's costs, but safety comes into it in a very big way as well. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah. So it's a little bit more complicated than just the size and the intensity. It's also about like where it is, and you're not necessarily trying to put it out so much as protect valuable assets. I think that's really helpful for us to understand. Yeah.
That and I mentioned about the species site management when it comes to fires. What the main commercial companies do is that they classify. So let's say a compartment, their rotation, let's say, is 20 years. They are 100 kilometers from the pulping station. They will put all efforts into that section of their land to ensure that the famous Zulu saying we have is "Noma kanjani," no matter what, they keep that fire as small as possible.
brilliant. Thank you. Thanks for your question, Ol. There's a few more in the chat, which is great. So on the chat, but on hands raised. I think Sabelo, you were first.
Afternoon, Simon. Am I audible?
Yes, I
you
can
are.
hear you.
Yes. I was happy to see Angel, but I don't see him anymore. I'm going to be a bit biased and go to the student side. I am in Sarsfield as we speak, doing my postgraduate in honors with an interest in field and forest fires, and currently doing a research that is focusing on different flammability of species, of how these species influence the flammability of these fires. So the question that I will have for you is that, do you guys have research projects that are available in your scale? Over and above the research, we are looking into the supervisions of students and also a possibility of funding, because that is what I think is lacking where I am. Because when I look to do masters, which relevant topic to do that is going to contribute into the industry as well, because I don't want to do any research, because no research is bad, but one needs to do a relevant research with a specific focus that is going to have a good contributions, and also looking at the supervision, which is very much good as well, and funding as well.
Thank you for that, Sabelo. I think a lot of research was done by Dr. Niels de Ronde many years ago on site species for fires, et cetera, and a lot of fuel modeling was done. during his time and his research. So I think you'll find a lot of that being at Sarsveld, where I'm an ex-SARSI. You will find a lot of that information available in your research centres, as well as the forestry research centres as well. Should be able to assist you where that is concerned. Is that your question? Is that?
Do you guys have any need of research? Sorry, I'm working with my desktop and phone, so technology. Do you guys have projects available? I'm looking at the projects available and relevant that you can give to students in universities.
Look, unfortunately, we don't, as the fire protection associations, and so that is, as far as that is concerned, what I would suggest you do is speak to Dion at Sarsveld. He's in contact with a lot of those people where they have specific projects in place that do research on this specific topic when it comes to species and fires, etc.
Thank you very much. He's currently one of my supervisors.
Yeah, he was at Sarsveld with me.
Sorry, I was talking with my mic. Oh, we've got two more people. I'm not sure who was first. So Terry and Dion. So maybe Terry, do you want to ask your question first?
Yeah, thanks, Adriana. And just to back up on what Simon was saying, maybe to help Oliver with his question, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Yeah, I think I work very closely with Simon, and obviously with the camera detection, and because of the value of the commercial forestry, our average time from picking up from the start of a fire to picking up with our camera detection is around 5 minutes. And our average time of getting people onto a fire is anything from 15 minutes to half an hour. So most of our fires are kept to less than half a hectare to a hectare. So when the conditions are really bad, then we start losing fires. And my Fire Protection Association, our biggest fire that we've had in the last 14 years since the Fire Protection Association's been going is about 5,000 hectares. So if you compare that to Canada and a lot of the other areas in the world, and that was one of those mega, almost like a fire danger day where the aircraft couldn't fly, we couldn't even get people to the fires because it was so dangerous. So maybe just to put in a bit of a perspective for Oliver's question, is that we fight our fires very differently to a lot of the world just because of the commercial value of the crops that we are protecting. And our camera detection obviously makes our reaction time a lot quicker and stuff like that. So it's more not a question, it's just to add to what Simon had to say, just to give you guys a bit of a perspective. Thanks.
Thanks, Terence.
Thanks very much. Dion?
Thanks, Adriana. Simon, yeah, Dion Rousseau, I'm a catchment specialist from the Western Cape, and we've just finished our fire season, and quite a bad one at that. I just want to ask Simon about how do you guys in KZN handle prescribed burning? Because, you know, we in the Western Cape used to, in the 80s and 70s and early 90s, you know, have our burnt breaks that we used to burn every year. And with the act the way it is now, it's quite litigious in that, you know, if we were to do prescribed burns or controlled burns and we lose them and there is damage to infrastructure, then, you know, we get sued, or there's that possibility of that happening. And, you know, I know that in KZN you guys do it, but I mean, you guys are doing it in Grassveld, so it's a lot easier to control. But I mean, have you had any cases where you've lost fires and sort of reached that point where it is becoming litigation? And, you know, how do you handle that? Because I definitely think that we need to start looking at that again. We spend vast amounts of money on firefighting, and by having these prescribed burns or controlled burns in place, we could potentially keep our fires relatively small, which we have been doing pretty effectively. But yeah, it's the prescribed burning. It's the fact that, you know, somebody is actually setting a fire that could potentially go out of control and do damage. So yeah, Simon, just your thoughts on that. Thanks.
Thanks, Dion. Yeah, I'll be honest with you. In this province, as you say, it's mostly grassland, and then up in the catchment areas of Katlamba, we encourage burning of grass for the simple reason, as long as it's done properly, and we have very strict guidelines as to what grass types during what time of the year should be burnt. But we also say to our landowners, you know, unfortunately, the Kara, as it used to be, there's not much policing as far as the Kara is concerned, which is, for your information, Adriana, that's the Conservation of Agricultural Resources Act. So we encourage burning. Touch wood, we haven't had any litigation out of it, but I say black areas is less fuel and less problem with fires coming at us. Obviously, there are scientific protocol that comes into place, especially conservation areas. But yeah, we haven't had a problem, and we encourage those kind of burnings in the right conditions. It's very different with you in the fynbos, and very different for people up in the woody areas in the Eastern Transvaal, etc., where you want a hot fire. We don't necessarily need that hot fire. But again, it's something that could be addressed through the fire protection associations.
Brilliant. Thank you, Dion, for your question. Are there any other questions from participants? I think, Terry, your hand's up, but that might be from before. One thing I was thinking about was risk communication. There was a couple of issues that you kind of raised, was that you get more fires during the risk days that are green and yellow compared to the extreme days. And then also you've obviously got issues with some landowners not being a part of the FPAs, and you know, why is that? So is that again all kind of encapsulated a little bit around you know, understanding around risk? I mean, I guess there's a cost element to the FPAs as well, but could you say anything a little bit about that kind of communication around risk? Issues.
What we have in South Africa is we've got a very, very good insurance organizations or insurance companies. So what will happen is that the insurance company will, yes, we'll insure your property. However, you must be a member of the FPA. Otherwise, the rebates and all those kind of things, you don't benefit from the rebates. So that in itself is, there's a lot of interaction that we have to, as fire protection associations, work with insurance companies to try and get into, then encourage landowners. But we do in a lot of situations, we have farmers out there, and I say this with tongue in cheek and no disrespect, that don't even know where cell phone switches on and off. And those are the guys that, and you know, with the economy in South Africa, as you've mentioned, there is a cost involved. And these farmers are on the bones of their backsides, and they just can't afford to do these things. So FPAs try and keep their costs as low as possible. So yeah, it's mainly your extremely, what we call regte boere in Afrikaans, that have been on the farms for centuries, where we pick up these problems. Younger farmers, the new guys coming in, and believe it or not, in a lot of cases where we've got a lot of land reform going on. The new people that come onto those farms, they want to be members of the FPA. So it is getting better, but that is one of the tasks of people like Terry and myself to encourage those kind of things.
Mm-hmm. Brilliant. Thank you very much. Great. Oh, Angel. Good. I was hoping you were going to ask a question, Angel. And we'll finish off with you with the last question because we're coming up to time. So please.
Greetings, Simon. Thanks for the
How's it, Angel?
well put together presentation. as well as the enthusiasm while delivering it. And Adriana, and to the rest of the other participants, thank you so much for giving us your time and attention to participate in this great presentation. Simon, my question is a little bit more of kind of explaining things that I kind of do not understand or would like to understand even much better. So I've spent some time working in the Western Cape, and I was able to interact with the Fire Protection Association as well as the community members. So what I picked up from your presentation is that most of your members, the membership in your Fire Protection Association is pretty much split between farming communities as well as the forestry communities. So when it comes to the Western Cape, the kind of risk, people at risk, also includes like some of the residential community members who are in the border, which is the wildland urban interface space. I'm kind of interested is there a way in which the Fire Protection Association would kind of merge to also kind of include residential communities or people that live within the edge of the wildland urban interface, because the risk is not only now faced by the farming communities alone, but also those kind of communities are also affected by the risk. But there seems to be a lack of where do they turn to. But the farming community kind of has a hearing ear to cry out when they are faced by fires, which is the Fire Protection Association. Because as we know, there's kind of a huge struggle now in reliance to the government in the current state of South Africa. So the Fire Protection Association seems to be a good shoulder to cry onto. So is there a possibility that Fire Protection Associations can kind of pick up and see what they can do with the current issues that we are faced with?
Thanks for that, Angel. Just to maybe very quickly answer that question, when a Fire Protection Association is established, before anything is done, before any paperwork is sent through to the DFFE for registration, all interested in the affected parties must be consulted before that FPA. And you will find that in a lot of cases, like let's take Terry Tedder's area down in Richmond, his area, his FPA encompasses a lot of those Ngonyama Trust areas that are out there. The problem is, and that is why I emphasize all the time, is about awareness and education, and to try and assist these people, like we have in the Eastern Cape and in KZN. We've got fire safe communities, and that encourages the local people, and we hand out Peters to them. We do education and awareness with them, etc. So that is, yes, there is a lot of that going on. But as you say quite clearly, it's the rands and cents at the end of the day, which are the problem, is to, how do we get the people into those rural areas in the Ngonyama Trust? But yeah, just to be simple, there is a lot of work going on from the FPOs that are out there at the moment to encourage them.
Thanks for that explanation.
Thank you, thank you, Angel, for your question. Thank you, Simon. So we're slightly over time now, so we'll wrap up. But I just want to say thank you again, Simon, for a fantastic talk. I said it was really clear and informative, and thank you for everyone who joined us today. And I hope you enjoyed it. And we will be planning another Fire and Practice webinar sometime soon, so keep an eye out. And we plan to share this one online as well, so look out for our YouTube channel for that update. And thank you again, Simon. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Adriana. Thanks, Angel, for all your hard work too.